These are the recorded lectures for Chapter 16, the digestive system. And again, I'm going to skip the learning outcomes, but I will, as we go through, I will try to, of course, make sure you focus on the highlighted areas, and I'll try to make sure that I mention the areas that I focus on when making out the quizzes and the exams. So the basics of the digestive system is that it provides fuel for the body cells functioning. The digestive system includes the digestive tract, or I will probably refer to it as the GI tract or gastrointestinal tract. And you can call it the alimentary canal, but that's a term that generally you use when you're referring to really any mammals, or any vertebrates. So we're just going to call it the GI tract, just to keep it simple. The GI tract is a muscular tube. That muscle is mostly smooth muscle, and it includes the oral cavity or the mouth. In fact, this is the pathway of food through the GI tract, so it's important that you learn this. The mouth, pharynx or throat, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. Then we have accessory organs that help with digestion, and they include the teeth, tongue, salivary glands. And these first three structures are components of the oral cavity. The gallbladder, liver, and pancreas. Functions of the digestive system include ingestion, which happens in the mouth. It's when you just take in the food and eat or drink. Mechanical processing, which the first thing you probably think of is just your teeth, grinding up and cutting up your food. But mechanical processing involves more than just that. That is the main type of mechanical processing. But it's breaking up your food particles into smaller pieces, because what that does is increase the surface area for the enzymes to work. If you swallow food whole, enzymes are only going to be able to act on the outer surface of that food that you swallowed. But if you chew it up into little teeny tiny pieces, you have all this surface area. And everywhere the enzymes can come in contact with, they can start breaking down that food. The third function is digestion, and this refers to the chemical breakdown of food. For example, the breakdown of larger carbohydrates into glucose, or the breakdown of proteins into smaller peptides, and then finally amino acids, or the breakdown of fats into fatty acids. Then you have secretion, which is the release of water, acids, enzymes, and buffers into the lumen of the digestive tract. Remember, the lumen is just the space inside the tube. So into the lumen of the GI tract. Absorption is the movement of particles from the lining of the GI tract into your blood. So it's the movement of small organic molecules, electrolytes, and water across the digestive epithelium and into interstitial fluid, which ends up being into your blood of the GI tract. This is how our nutrients go from being located in our GI tract to getting into our bloodstream. And then defecation, of course, is the act of eliminating feces. So we're going to start with figure 16.1 over on the left side of the page with just the GI tract itself. So here you have your mouth, the pharynx, which is the throat, the esophagus, and then it kind of goes behind the liver and connects with the stomach. This is the stomach. And then the stomach connects with the small intestine. That's large intestine here, but it goes behind that and connects with the small intestine. And then the small intestine connects with the large intestine, which goes up, across, down, and then kind of curves. And there's the rectum and the anus. And the accessory organs include the teeth and the tongue for the teeth for chewing, which is called mastication. The tongue, which assists in the process of mastication and also has a sensory analysis, of course, taste for our food. And then we have the salivary glands, which are located in 3 areas up here at the superior portion of the pharynx. And then you have one that's sublingual and then submandibular. So those are the 3 areas where we have salivary glands, and then the liver, which mainly its function in digestion is producing bile, which is also stored in the gallbladder. And then the pancreas is retroperitoneal. It lies behind the peritoneum, where most of these organs are within the serous membrane called the peritoneum. But the pancreas is retroperitoneal. It lies deep to the stomach. It's kind of like if you lifted up the stomach, the pancreas would be lying against the body wall. There are 4 layers that line the GI tract. The layer that's closest to the lumen, so the most internal layer, would be the mucosa, the submucosa, and then the muscularis externa, and the serosa is your outermost layer. And some areas, just to let you know, sometimes you'll see the word adventitia. Some areas of the GI tract are lined with adventitia replaces the serosa, but it's still either one of those are the outer layer. All right, the mucosa in high mechanical stress areas is composed of stratified squamous epithelial tissue for protection. So it's very similar to skin, except that it is not keratinized. So we're talking about like the lining of the oral cavity, the anus, your esophagus is lined with stratified squamous, your throat is lined with, your pharynx is lined with stratified squamous. But then when you get into the GI tract, the stomach and the intestines, that tissue is simple columnar epithelial tissue because there's secretion going on and there's absorption going on. And most of this, and maybe all of it, is lined with, covered with folds called microvilli that increase the surface area for absorption. So simple columnar epithelial tissue lines the GI tract once you get in, as far as the stomach. The underlying layer, I guess you say the submucosa, is called the lamina propria, and that is composed of areolar connective tissue. Then you have a smooth muscle layer called the muscularis mucosa, and it moves the food and the bolus, and then it becomes chyme in the stomach. It moves all of that along, and even feces, all of that along through the GI tract. The modifications such as villi, which are folds, or glands, depend on the function. And there are other folds as well, like the plicae circularis in the small intestine and the rugae in the stomach. So the folding usually is for increasing surface area. This image shows you the lumen. You can see the lumen of the GI tract. In fact, let's start up here at the top. This connective tissue, excuse me, that contains blood vessels is called the mesentery. And especially the small intestines are surrounded and attached by mesentery. It kind of helps hold it in place. So let's just say this is a small intestine. It doesn't say, on here, but it can be a small or large, but let's just say it's the small intestine. So what you have is some folding on the inner wall of the lumen, and these folds are called plicae circulares. And then they have more folds. These little folds are called villi. And what the villi do is increase the surface area for absorption. So, and as far as the layers of the GI tract, you can see the mucosa is here with the folding, and then the submucosa or lamina propria. And then you have the muscular layer, which is the muscularis mucosa, and then you have the serosa, which is also visceral peritoneum. It's the part of the peritoneum that contacts the organs, that actually contacts the surface of the organs. So looking at a villus, this is actually one of those circular folds, the plicae circulares. And then here are the individual villi. So what I want to point to here are here we go. The submucosal plexus is an area of nerve stimulation in the submucosa or lamina propria. And then the myenteric plexus is an area of nerve stimulation within the muscularis layer. So we will go over those in more detail. Submucosa is a layer of dense, irregular connective tissue, similar to, I don't know if you remember when we were covering the integumentary system, the dermis of the skin, the deeper layer called the reticular layer, is also composed of this dense, irregular connective tissue. And then you're going to find within the submucosa, the submucosal plexus. It's like the digestive system it is stimulated by nervous stimulation from the central nervous system, because definitely the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system plays a role in digestion, a large role. But it also has its own neural network that can function without the central nervous system. So the submucosal plexus regulates secretion and motility. The muscular layer, the muscularis mucosa, contains another nerve plexus called the myenteric plexus. And when this myenteric plexus is stimulated by the parasympathetic nervous system, it increases the activity of the muscular layer. And sympathetic stimulation actually decreases the activity. Now, prior to this chapter, for a lot of systems of the body, sympathetic increases the activity and parasympathetic decreases, but it is opposite with the digestive system. When we are relaxed and the parasympathetic nervous system is active, it's going to increase digestion. And the sympathetic is going to decrease digestion. Because we don't want to be carrying out the processes of digestion when we are in the fight or flight response. When we're running or fighting for our lives, we don't want to be doing that. So that's the reason parasympathetic stimulates digestion. Okay, so we have the serosa, which is the outermost layer of the GI tract wall, and it sometimes is called the adventitia. The serosa is the serous membrane. It is also the visceral peritoneum. It's the serous membrane that covers the muscularis externa. And then we have mesenteries, which are double sheets of serous membrane that suspend portions of the GI tract. And this is particularly going to be in the intestines because they're, so long and they're folded up and, just to hold them in place. The mesenteries provide pathways for blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves, and they help organize and stabilize the attached organs. As far as movement of the digestive materials, kind of sort of like the heart, there are some pace setter cells in the smooth muscle that trigger contraction. And then the peristalsis is the wave-like contractions. They're initiated by the circular layer of smooth muscle, followed by the longitudinal layer. So the smooth muscle that lines our GI tract causes peristalsis that propels the bolus of food down the GI tract. And what that means is, starting in the esophagus, even if you are standing on your head, food is going to move by peristalsis toward the stomach, whether that is with gravity or against gravity. Now, if you're standing on your head, it's not going to be as smooth of a process. You may have a little bit of acid reflux or something, but your food is still going to move in that same direction from the esophagus toward the stomach. And then segmentation are also muscular contractions, but segmentation is for mixing. It's mixing action. It doesn't propel the food along. It churns and breaks up the food.